everyone, today we're diving into Hoyan and Holden's first impressions. We're not just looking at their early damage numbers, but also putting their skills and mechanics to the test right from the start. How do they really feel in the early game? Let's find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're looking at these two new characters, Holden and Hoyan, basically getting a feel for their core kits, how they play early on.
And we've got some simulation data too, right? To see what their potential looks like maybe after a bit of initial investment.
Exactly. It's about understanding what they bring to the table right away and what the numbers suggest once you've put in some basic work. Not maxed out, but, a solid foundation.
Okay, makes sense. Think of it as a snapshot after you've given them some attention.
Precisely. It gives you a great starting point to figure out, okay, where might these characters fit?
All right, let's kick things off with Holden then. Reason Anonymous. Scales off DEF. That's kind of unusual for an SSR damage dealer, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Most scale off ATK. So Holden, right off the bat, he feels sturdy. Versatile too.
Sturdy because of the DEF scaling.
Exactly. He's just naturally tankier than your typical glass cannon DPS. And his kit feels like it's built for reliable utility, which is super valuable early across different kinds of content.
Okay, sturdy and useful. Let's break down the skills. His S1, that's the multi-hit single target attack.
Yeah, that's the one. Hits 3 times, single enemy. And the key thing early on, it reliably applies DEF down.
DEF down is always good. Helps the whole team's physical damage.
Totally. Just having that consistently applied is immediately useful. Makes everything hit harder.
But there's a passive attached to it too, right? Something about counters and damage based on his DE.
There is. And this is where that early game feel versus late game potential comes in. The passive boosts his counterattack rate and final damage based on his DEF at the start of the battle.
Oh, okay.
Now later on, when you've got amazing gear, super high DF,
yeah,
this passive is incredible. Big damage boost for him.
Well, early on, maybe not so much.
Right. Early on, you probably won't have the crazy DEF stats.
Yeah.
And you need his S1 skill leveled up, ideally maxed, to really see that passive pop-off in terms of his own damage.
So don't expect him to be your main damage dealer right away just from that passive.
Exactly. The immediate value from S1 is definitely that consistent DEF break.
Yeah.
The personal damage comes later with investment.
Gotcha. What about his S2? Hits hard, single target, and does something funky with the turn meter.
Yeah, it hits hard, and it pushes the enemy's turn meter back by a full 100%.
Whoa, 100%. So it just resets their turn, sends them way back.
Pretty much. It's like hitting the brakes on their turn progress. Super strong control effect.
Okay, that sounds powerful. Any catch?
Well, it also has this other effect. It maximizes the enemy's skill cooldowns. If it's not resisted, locks them out of their big skills.
Ooh, nasty. Great for PvP then. And maybe some PvE stages.
Definitely powerful there. But here's the important PvE catch. That cooldown maxing effect. It doesn't work on major PvE bosses, the ones with the big health bar at the top.
Ah, okay. Good limitation to know. So S2 is powerful, situational control. How about S3? That's the AoE.
Yep, his S3, AoE, hits twice. And honestly, this might be where his immediate early game value really shines for general use.
Why is that? What does it do?
It dispels 1 buff from all enemies. Fantastic for getting rid of annoying shield, DEF buffs, whatever.
Okay, Dispel is always useful.
Oh, and it applies 2 debuffs. ATK down and RES down.
Nice. ATK down helps survival, RES down helps other debuffs land?
Exactly. And the chance for the Dispel and debuffs to land actually doubles if they hit crits, which is a nice bonus.
So pretty reliable utility then.
Very reliable. But here's the kicker, especially for auto farming early on. The AI loves using this S3 as his first move.
Oh, really? That's huge for consistency.
Makes him amazing for auto-battling stages like Terrormaton, Aurora, places where getting those AoE debuffs and dispels out right away just makes the run so much smoother and safer. Really improves stability.
Yeah, I can see that. Having the AI prioritize the useful opener is a massive quality of life win. Okay, so based on the kit alone, Holden feels pretty solid early.
Definitely. That S3 utility feels great right away, especially for farming. The S1 DEF break is always useful. The S2 control is powerful when it applies. The big S1 passive damage is more of a long-term goal.
Right. Now let's talk numbers. You mentioned simulations.
Yeah.
What do they suggest about his performance potential, assuming that sort of foundational investment level? Level 50, skill 5, decent gear, but not perfect, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, that benchmark. Level 50, skill level 5, 0 dupes. Optimal sets, but maybe only half optimal substats. A realistic goal after some focused effort.
Okay, so where does he land?
In the sustained single target simulations, he's kind of middle to lower pack if you just look purely at his own damage number in isolation. But the simulation for him specifically assumes he's getting hit about 60% of the time by the enemy.
Ah, to factor in his counter potential from the S1 passive.
Exactly. So while others might rank higher because maybe they benefit more from specific buffs in the sim, Holden's position looks better when you consider he's also bringing utility and potentially punishing enemies for attacking him. He's not topping the charts there, but he's contributing more broadly if he draws fire.
And what about multi-target situations? AoE fights?
That's where he looks much more potent in the simulations. They assume 4 enemies are hitting him, which really boosts his calculated counter damage potential.
So the simulations support the idea that he shines when he's being attacked.
Yeah, it reinforces that. If you need someone sturdy who brings debuffs and can actually benefit from taking hits, the numbers suggest he performs well at this investment level, especially when enemies target him.
Okay, let's connect that back for someone starting out. Big wins, things to watch out for with Holden early on.
Big win. That S3 AI priority and the immediate AoE utility. Huge for auto farming and general stage clearing. Also, his S2 and S3 utility effects get a big jump at just skilled level 3.
So you get a lot of the good stuff without needing absolute max investment right away.
Right. Makes the supportive build quite functional early. The counter potential is there, but needs late game DEF to be a primary damage source. Downside. If you want him as a main damage dealer, you really do need that S1 maxed eventually for the passive. And remember, the S2 cooldown effect doesn't work on big bosses.
Okay, so overall feel for Holden early.
Feels like a really solid, reliable utility pick early. Provides great debuffs, dispels some nice control, scales well into a tanky damage threat later, but his immediate value is that team support and making your runs more stable. Seems like a safe, useful character to build.
All right, solid start with Holden. Let's flip to his twin, Hoyan. Hollow Animus, Burst Revive Specialist. Sounds intriguing. What's the first impression there?
Hoyan feels much more volatile, polarizing, really.
The polarizing how?
Like she's either going to be absolutely dominant in the right situation, or she can feel kind of underwhelming. Early impressions suggest she might struggle for consistency in typical PvE stuff, unless you build very specifically for her. But she brings some really unique things, especially for PvP.
Okay, volatile, polarizing. Let's look at the skills. S1.
S1 is pretty basic. 2 hits, single target. Decent damage. It has a chance to apply wound.
Wound. That's a nasty one that stops healing or does damage, right?
Yeah, really strong debuff. Usually lasts 1 turn, but if you get her S1 to level 5, it lasts for 2 turns, which is often lethal if the enemy can't cleanse it.
2 turns sounds brutal, but what's the catch early?
The chance to apply it is pretty low initially, so you can't really rely on it consistently until you invest heavily in that S1. It's more of a nice bonus if it happens early on.
Okay, so S1 potential is high later, less reliable early. What about her big damage button, the S3?
Right, her S3 nuke. It's a single powerful hit, costs half her current HP to use.
Ouch. Risky.
Kinda, but the damage steal is based on her missing max HP, up to a huge 90% bonus damage, and it has a fairly low cooldown.
So use it when she's already hurt for maximum impact.
Exactly. Massive burst potential if she's low. And crucially, her S2 kit has a way to trigger this S3 instantly at that max damage, ignoring the cooldown entirely. That's key.
Ah, okay. That leads us right into the S2. Sounds like that's the heart of her kit.
Absolutely. It's complex, but it basically does 3 interconnected things. First, cheat death.
Cheat death. Sounds good.
Yeah. Periodically, it's once every 4 actions. If her S2 is maxed, she gets this status. If she takes lethal damage while it's active, she survives with just 1 HP.
Okay, survives. Then what?
Then she immediately gains Soul War, which is like a 1-turn death protection shield.
So she can't just die to the next hit.
Right. And when that cheat death triggers, she instantly uses her S3 nuke at the maximum 90% damage boost, completely ignoring its cooldown.
Whoa. Okay, so survive death, get protected, and unleash a massive S3 nuke for free. That's a lot.
It's her core burst engine. That's how she gets those guaranteed huge hits off.
What else does S2 do? You said 3 things.
Second thing, ally revive. If Hoyan kills an enemy, she revives 1 fallen ally.
Just brings them back.
Yep. And importantly, the enemy she killed, they're banned from being revived themselves. She gets permanent kills.
Permanent kills and revives allies. That's really unique utility. It feels very PvP oriented or for long, tough fights.
It definitely offers a unique angle. And the third part of S2 ties it together, ATK stacking.
How does she get stacks?
She gains a stack of ATK% boost up to 3 stacks max whenever either the cheat death triggers or she revives an ally.
Ah, so her core mechanics feed directly into making her hit harder over time.
Exactly. Those stacks are vital for her sustained damage.
So putting it all together, her damage seems really tied to triggering cheat death or getting kills for stacks and using S3 when low HP. How does that feel early on?
And that's why she feels polarizing. Her consistent damage output really hinges on getting those S2 stacks. And honestly, in most standard PvE content, making that happen reliably without a very specific team or strategy is tricky.
So she's not getting stacks, her damage is just...
Pretty much described as mediocre without stacks, yeah. The S3 nuke can be huge, but it's conditional on low HP or that cheat death proc. The revive is great, but she needs to be the one landing the killing blow. She needs things to go her way, or needs you to build entirely around making them go her way.
Okay, let's look at the simulations again. Same investment level as Holden. What do the numbers say about Hoyan?
Right, same parameters. Level 50, skill 5, decent gear. But for Hoyan, the simulation results are really telling. You'll see her listed multiple times in the sustained single target rankings.
Yeah, I saw that. Multiple entries.
Because they simulated her at different average stack levels. There's a ranking for her with 0 stacks, basically, if her S2 passive never really gets going. Then one for around 1.5 stacks average, and another for 2.5 stacks average, representing her passive activating more often.
And I bet the difference is pretty big.
Huge. It perfectly illustrates the point. Her damage output varies wildly depending on getting those stacks. She's much lower on the list with 0 stacks and climbs significantly as the stack count goes up.
Wow, so the simulations directly show how critical that S2 passive is for her damage.
Absolutely. They also assumed her average HP was around 45% for her normal S3 casts, and that she got one free S3 trigger from cheat death during the sustained fight. But those stack breakpoints are the real story. Unlocking her damage means getting those stacks, period.
Okay, so getting stacks is key for PvE, but you said it's hard early on.
It really is. The most reliable way is triggering cheat death repeatedly, which means she needs to take killing blows and survive them.
So you almost need to make her a target.
Kind of. The impressions suggest maybe running her as the only squishy glass cannon on a tanky team, hoping enemies focus her. But that's a fragile strategy, hard to manage, especially early without perfect stats or support.
Any other way to help her?
Running her with characters who give cooldown reduction can help cycle her S2 and S3 faster, which might lead to more triggers or stacks over time. But it's still involved. It's not like characters who just press buttons and do damage consistently. She requires effort and specific team building for PvE. Potentially rewarding, but definitely more work.
Okay. What about PvP? With cheat death, instant nukes, permanent kills, revives. She sounds potentially terrifying there.
She absolutely can be a monster in PvP. If you draft her well as that glass cannon, and the opponent can immediately counter her, she can just snipe key targets after surviving. Or a tankier build could work in slower matchups, leveraging the permanent kills and ally revives or attrition.
But you mentioned counters. Are they common?
Yeah, and they're pretty hard counters. Characters like Selene, Massiah, Borgne, Heinrich, they have ways to deal with her.
How do they counter her specifically?
The main ways are disabling passive effects entirely, or removing buffs like her Soul Ward. Someone like Heinrich, his buff block stops her getting Soul Ward after she survives at 1 HP, leaving her wide open.
So she survives the hit but can be killed right after.
Exactly. And others, like Borgne or Massiah with their S3s, can sometimes just ignore passive effects altogether. They hit her, bypass the cheat death, and she just dies. No 1 HP survival, no Soul Ward, no instant S3.
Ooh. Okay, so if her passive gets disabled or ignored, her whole gimmick falls apart.
Pretty much. That's the risk in PvP.
Any other little mechanical details about her that are worth knowing?
Yeah, a couple interesting ones. If Hoyan dies and gets revived by someone else, like Sonya, she loses all her accumulated S2 stacks. Gotta start over.
Okay. Stacks are lost on external revive. Good to know.
Also, Heinrich's buff block stops Soul Ward, but she still survives at 1 HP the first time, so it doesn't stop the initial survival. And one more. The ATK stack she gains from surviving via S2. She gets it after that instant S3 fires off.
So the nuke that saves her doesn't benefit from the stack she just earned.
Right, only subsequent attacks benefit from that particular stack. Little details, but they matter for optimizing her.
Okay, let's revisit the pros and cons for Hoyan, thinking about that early to mid-game player.
Pros. Insanely high burst potential if you set it up. That automatic Soul Ward is clutch when it works. Ally Revive is super unique utility. And the 2-turn wound at S1 level 5 is incredibly strong if it lands.
And the cons seem pretty major early on.
Yeah. S2 stacks are viable for her damage, and they're just hard to get reliably in PvE without specific strategies or investment. The ATK percent gain per stack is also pretty low until you level up her S2 significantly, and she's hard countered by common mechanics like passive disable and buff removal, especially in PvP.
So overall feel for Hoyan early.
Definitely high risk, high reward. Very dependent on specific conditions, mainly getting those S2 stacks online. Probably needs significant setup, investment, especially in S2, or both, to feel consistently powerful in PvE. The simulation numbers really drive home how much her performance swings based on that passive. Unique, but demanding.
Okay, let's pull this all together. Comparing Holden and Hoyan early on, what are the big takeaways for someone deciding who to maybe focus on?
Well, based on these first looks and the benchmarks, Holden seems like the more consistently useful one right out of the gate for general content. His S3 utility that dispels the debuffs, plus the S1 DEF break, they're just immediately helpful for team stability and farming.
Makes sense. He provides a solid foundation.
Right. Hoyan, she feels much more volatile early. She can be amazing, but she might feel underwhelming if you can't get her mechanics rolling. Her unique utility is powerful, but that burst potential is really locked behind getting her S2 working. We're building specifically for her.
And the simulation numbers back that up.
Yeah, exactly. They give you that benchmark for performance after some decent investment. Hoyan's huge spread in the rankings, depending on stacks, just perfectly highlights how variable she is. It confirms that getting her passive online is everything for her damage output. Holden's numbers showed a solid baseline, especially if he's drawing fire, reflecting his utility and counter potential.
So if you're thinking about early investment, who's easier to get value from quickly?
Probably Holden. His key utility effects from S2 and S3 get pretty strong even at skill level 3. So you can run a supportive build that adds a lot of value relatively early without needing to max him out right away.
Whereas Hoyan needs more commitment to feel strong consistently.
Seems like it, yeah. Her damage and stack reliability are much more tied to higher skill levels, especially S2, And she often needs those specific team setups,
Hmm.
so she feels like potentially a higher investment character just to get her core engine running reliably for consistent PvE damage.
And quick thought on PvP again.
Both have strong, unique tools. Holden's got control, utility, counter potential, very versatile. Hoyan has that cheat death, the instant nuke, the revive, super high impact, potentially game-changing. But you have to respect those hard counters. High risk, high reward there too.
All right, so we've done a deep dive into these first impressions, the core mechanics, looked at some initial simulation benchmarks for Hoyan and Holden, assuming some foundational work put in. Hopefully this gives everyone listening a much clearer picture of how they might feel early on, their strengths, their weaknesses.
Yeah, hopefully it helps you figure out if they fit what you're looking for, what kind of investment they might need, and what you can realistically expect from them as you start building them up. Understanding that foundational kit and potential is key.
Definitely.